Hello everyone, amateur meteorologist First and Weather here. It is Tuesday, or rather Wednesday, February 17th, 2021, and this is going to be a rather long video. I'm really going to go in depth into the storm system tomorrow and really what's going to be happening and why this is going to be a potentially very dangerous system for the Carolinas and Virginia particularly because of the significant ice threat. Now, first off, I wanted to start off with a nice little radar picture to give you an idea of where the storm is right now and what it's doing. And as you can see, it's looking healthy. You have some very nice convection here, lots of nice storms. You have a nice healthy snow shield on the northern side, and it really came down in Arkansas. It's coming down very hard right now in Tennessee. And one thing that I also posted on my Twitter account earlier today was that if I did not know any better, and if I was looking at this radar image without any sort of context, I would immediately tell you that North Carolina and Virginia were in for a record snowstorm. Or not a record snowstorm, but a significant snowstorm, right? But the issue is the upper level pattern, and that really has screwed things up for parts of the lower mid Atlantic because if that upper level pattern was just a little bit better, we could be talking about very significant snows all the way down to Raleigh and even Charlotte based on where the storm is right now. But unfortunately, that's just not the case. And in the next slide, I'll explain why. So as you can see right here, this is the GFS model, geopotential height forecast for 0Z Thursday. So that's basically a couple hours ago, but you get the point. You can see that you have an expansive ridge in the eastern or the western portion of the Atlantic, right? And that basically forces that deep trough right here. And this deep trough was actually the initial instigator of this southeast ridge. This was because of that very strong or that weakened polar vortex that came down into the central portion of the country, delivering that record-breaking cold and snow to Texas, Oklahoma, and the central United States. But again, with every reaction, there has to be an equal and opposite reaction, right? And so because of that very anonymously cold air in the central U.S., and troughing, you're going to have above average heights in the eastern part of the country. And so because of that, you're going to see, sort of an interference in the pattern. You're not going to see something that's conductive for snow in the mid-Atlantic. Rather, you're going to see something that's conducive for ice. And here's why. This ridge right here forces these storm systems to go through. All right, it forces them to be cutters. What it also does is it floods in warm air in the mid levels because you have sinking heights at the mid levels. So instead of it being, for example, 28 degrees at the surface and then colder as you go up, instead of that you have 28 degrees at the surface and then 35 or even 40 degrees just a couple thousand feet up. So when the precip does fall, it melts from snow into rain, and then once it hits the ground, it goes into freezing rain. And that's the main issue with the system, and that's why we're seeing this low cut inland because of this big ridge, and also that's causing the mid-levels to become very warm, especially the south of I-64. And that's really why areas south of I-64 are not seeing snow, and why this system is riding up the Appalachian Mountains, or not the Appalachian Mountains, but rather why it's basically cutting right through central VA. All right, so I want to start off with the NAM 12-kilometer model. This can give you a good idea of what's going to happen and a general overview of the system. So let's play it through. All right, so as you can see, it shows precip arriving in central Virginia by about 4 or 5 a.m. Thursday morning. And it almost immediately changes it over to some very heavy sleet and then freezing rain in the Carolinas and then snow north of that. I think, for example, Richmond, central VA, those areas will really quickly change over to sleet. I think many areas might not actually even see snow. Rather, it's just going to be immediate sleet and then freezing rain after that. I think you have to go north, maybe around Charlottesville, then to DC to see a prolonged period of snow, 5-6 hours of snow before you see that change over to freezing rain and sleet. You can see it also does show some very heavy snowfall rates where it does, in fact, snow. So you're gonna that Goldilocks zone is gonna be just about 10 to 20 miles north of that sleet line, because that's where you're gonna have the heaviest snowfall, and also temperatures just conducive enough to have those nice snow ratios. And then you can actually see the NAM then does show a second round of freezing rain coming in early Friday morning. And that could add maybe a tenth of an inch of freezing rain on areas along and east of I-95. And that's certainly something we're going to have to watch. But then after that, it finally pulls out and a very cold weekend ensues with a strong area of high pressure building in, causing cold overnight lows and, very chilly daytime highs. We're talking high temps in the mid 30s for central VA Saturday and Sunday. So definitely some unseasonably cool air moving in behind this system. Now I want to show you the NAM 12-kilometer snowfall forecast. I think the snowfall forecast is very reasonable. It may be a touch high in DC and Northern Virginia, but I think other than that, it does provide a very good picture of where the heaviest snowfall axis is going to be. As you can see, it shows almost nothing for central VA, and I agree with that depiction. Because of the upper level pattern of the system, there is just very minimal support for seeing any sort of snowfall accumulation south and along of I-64. I think you have to go to far northwestern Virginia before you start to see some significant snowfall accumulation. And then you can see it continues that into Baltimore, Maryland, northeastern West Virginia, and also southeastern PA and New Jersey. Now here is the high resolution rapid refresh model. This model is really great for seeing what's going on, and it really does provide some good real-time updates. Now, as you can see, this is valid for 11Z Thursday. So this is early Thursday morning, and it shows a very quick changeover to sleet, actually, and freezing rain for central VA. You can see it actually almost bypasses the sleet and goes straight to freezing rain, and that actually is a possibility, right? And you can see that if I click on that sounding right here at 11Z Thursday, there's almost no period of snow, if any at all. There's no actual snow whatsoever in central VA, and here's why. You can see that warm nose in the mid-levels right here, all right? And that's going to make things sleet or freezing rain. Now, if we go further north, right, for example, let's go to DC. It shows some very heavy snowfall, and you can see just how borderline we are between snow and sleet. You can see that there's that line right there edging out right here. So it's going to be a very fine line between seeing sleet and then snow. And I think DC will quickly change over after a few hours at most of seeing some snow. And you can see the HRRR actually has this right on the borderline. And ironically enough, with this system, if you see some very heavy precip rates, that might actually change it over to sleet or freezing rain, because you have those, instead of having typically colder air at the mid-levels, you're going to have warmer air at the mid-levels. And so, for example, if you get stuck under a very heavy band, don't be surprised if you actually see it changing from snow to sleet as that warmer air is dragged down and you start to see that moderation. Now here is the NAM 3-kilometer model, and this is an extended sounding. So this is from position A, which is in northeastern Georgia, to position B, which is somewhere in eastern Pennsylvania or northwestern New Jersey. And this gives you a good idea of what's really going on in the atmosphere on a horizontal gradient. So you can see right here, this is the area of greatest frontogenesis. And you can see that it's very strong, actually. You have lots of heavy precip, and that's been reflected in the models for some very heavy precip in this system, and that's going to allow things to pile up quickly where it does, in fact, stay snow. And you can see that the 0 Celsius line, which indicates which areas see snow and which areas see rain, you can see just how low that 0 Celsius line is, and then how far in, right? So you have that 0 Celsius line then receding, and you have these warmer mid-level temperatures really causing things to stay sleet and freezing rain. And this just gives you an idea of how far this warm nose is really going to go, all the way to Maryland, actually. So it just shows the strength of that mid-level ridge and those sinking heights for this system. Now here is the European ensemble. Usually this close to a system, using ensemble forecast is not the best thing to do, but I think it does pinpoint where the heaviest area of snowfall totals is going to be. focus on the purple region right here. I think somewhere in these higher elevated surfaces or these higher elevated regions, you're going to have that jackpot of snow. And it's primarily because of those cooler surface temps allowing for higher ratios and also some topographical lifting. Now here is where it gets really interesting. Here is the ice forecast. This is one particular model, and you can see it has anywhere from 0.25 to 0.75 inches of ice. And keep in mind, this is not a direct ice forecast. This is just a QPF or quantitative precip forecast. So it just basically takes what the amount of rain that falls and shows it as ice if it's below 32 or at 32. And you can see it does in fact show a nice healthy band of freezing rain right through Richmond, just east of DC into Southern Virginia, and also some locally higher totals right here in these elevated surfaces. And again, I think this has merit. If we go to the next model, you can see it shows something very similar. A heavy band of freezing rain here, and then also a little bit of a lull, and then another band of heavy freezing rain in southwestern VA. And then also here's the Argent model. It's a bit more aggressive. It has up to maybe 3/4 of an inch of rain, of freezing rain in some spots. And I think this is really going to be very, very dangerous because last week you already had one ice storm that was very damaging. At one point, 80% of some counties in Virginia were out of power. And really just not a good situation. And if this verifies, we're talking some devastating impacts in terms of ice. Power is gone. Trees are collapsing. Roads are impossible to travel on, very dangerous and even deadly potentially. And so this is why you need to stay home tomorrow because this ice and freezing rain is really going to make things very, very dangerous. And just to reflect the situation, you can still see many areas in Southern Virginia are still not out of the woods. They're still out of power from last week's storm. And if this ice forecast verifies, I think it's going to be very concerning to see what happens with this system tomorrow. And again, surface temperatures for at least 4 to 5 hours are going to be in the mid to upper 20s, especially along and north of I-64. And that's going to allow for freezing rain to really start to pile up, even on the roads, right? With last week's system, it was mostly on elevated surfaces, trees, fences, electricity poles, but this time it could really be on the roads, making things a mess because of those cold road temperatures and also those cold current surface temperatures in the mid to upper 20s before gradually warming up into the lower 30s. And one thing I want to highlight is usually the National Weather Service is very conservative when it comes to their forecasts. They don't usually use extreme language, but even the forecast office at Wayfield is saying this. Regardless, significant to crippling impacts are possible due to ice for portions of the area. Most areas in the advisory will experience a changeover to rain Thursday afternoon. So basically what they're saying is that even southwestern areas are going to see potentially crippling impacts. And I think, in my opinion, that is going to be sort of the bullseye of heaviest impacts from the system in terms of freezing rain. That's where you could really get a prolonged period of heavy freezing rain and even some sleet, really, having devastating impacts. Now, one silver lining with this is that some of the models are indicating a prolonged period of sleet before changing over to freezing rain. And that is especially true for areas along and north of I-64. And if that verifies, that would go a long way in sort of reducing the freezing rain totals and also making sure that the power outages stay in check because sleet bounces off of trees and power lines, but it also makes roads just as dangerous. So it's sort of a win-lose situation. It's not really a win-win at all. It's either sleet or freezing rain, pick your poison. And I think as you go further south of I-64, the freezing rain threat really does increase and could really cause some significant damage. Now, finally, here is my forecast in terms of snow and ice. You can see right here, this is my snowfall map. If you're under this light blue line, I think you're going to see only ice and rain. So you're not really going to see any snow. Now, in this coating to 1 inch zone right here, I think this includes, by the way, sleet accumulation. So you could see an inch of sleet potentially. But I think these areas in this north of this light blue shading will see maybe 30 minutes to up to 45 minutes of light to moderate snow before seeing that change over to sleet and eventually freezing rain. Now, in this narrow band right here, 1 to 3 inches, I think, is a good bet. This includes DC, just northwest of Charlottesville, and also these southwestern counties of Virginia. Then in this purple region, I think 3 to 6 inches is a likely bet. This includes the Baltimore area and also the mountains of West Virginia. And then finally, I think there's going to be a sort of bullseye of 4 to 8 inches of snow. This includes Winchester, the mountains of Maryland and West Virginia, and just in general, these higher elevated regions, foreseeing that, bullseye of 4 to 8. Now, here's where it gets really important. Here's my ice forecast. So you can see in this yellow shading up to 1/10 an inch of ice. Then in this brown color, 10th of an inch to 1/4 inch of ice in some spots. In this red, 0.25 to half an inch of ice in some spots potentially, especially as you go further south. And finally, in this pink, I think this is where it could get really devastating. Half an inch of ice or more. And I think many areas will be flirting with the 1 inch ice mark in some spots. I think most areas will not, but many areas will see 0.75 inches of ice, and a couple spots here and there will see an inch of ice, believe it or not, which will be truly devastating and truly crippling for those areas. And keep in mind, this weekend is going to be very cold. So if you're out of power, that is really going to create a dangerous situation. So again, please make your plans, stay safe. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you next time.